So I'm going to start off with a question. How many of you ever felt like one of your disabilities blocked you from chasing your dreams, more specifically your dream career? Because I know I have, but for me, I discovered that life on the autism spectrum didn't have to mean a diminished life. As a matter of fact, I'm here to tell you how I use it as a strength to actually help me create and lead the life and career I want. But it wasn't always like that. When I was young, I've been bullied all my life. I was always the odd man out. And even though I realized something was wrong with me, but I just couldn't identify what it was. So when I was about 14 years old and I got my diagnosis, I had so many questions and answers at the same time, which was really confusing. Because autism is characterized by marked difficulties in social interaction, behavior, communication, and sensory sensitivities. And I just assumed that all of those things apply to me. And in fact, it took me about 10 years to find out that autism, more specifically Asperger's syndrome, is not a one-size-fits-all condition. It can vary in many ways from person to person, and more specifically from men to women, which is really interesting. To prove you my point, I'm going to give you 3 main characteristics of the autism spectrum that don't really apply to me. Let me explain. So the first thing is absolutely needing routine. I could use it, but I don't need it, just like 70% of all human beings, right? But I remember I had been told that fear would stress me out, and it kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy, so change started to stress me out because I had been told it would. Secondly, being introverted, I don't know how many of you know me in person, but I'm not really the introverted type. And I will tell you later on about how I use it to my advantage. And the third thing is taking things literally. I sometimes do that, but not anymore, I guess, but because there's one situation I remember when my boss, during my last full-time job, he was talking about having to go drain his potatoes, and I thought, are you going to cook potatoes in the office? And obviously, he was just talking about using the bathroom, which is really funny. So, it still makes me laugh. I can hear you think, like, how does autism affect her? So let me tell you a little more about my so-called weaknesses. The first thing is, you may or may not tell, but I'm really socially awkward. But as I'm extroverted and I wear my heart on my sleeve, people just assume that I'm sociable. And while that is very true, I'm still not always aware of social guidelines and boundaries. So whenever I do or say something that is perceived as offending, people just assume that I'm rude. So when I look back on the past 10 years, I can't tell you how many people I've insulted without even realizing it. The second thing is my anxiety, which is still a problem for me. I'm really nervous right now. My heart is oof. But I can tell you one thing, it has led to safety-seeking behavior, reassurance-seeking. My self-esteem used to be defined by what others thought of me, and it's still kind of an ongoing process, but I'm working on it, so I'm happy about that. And the third thing is black and white thinking. I'm really prone to black and white thinking. For me, it's always been all or nothing. I either obsess over something or I hate it. But for a long time, I let these weaknesses define me. I tried to hide them, I ran away from them, and still people would notice something was wrong with me, which was very, very frustrating. And even though I had my diagnosis, I would still try to cover up everything autism-related, both in my private and professional life, which created a lot of distress for me. My parents, who always wanted the best for me, they're somewhere here in the room. Raise your hand. They always wanted the best for me, but they often assumed I was aiming too high whenever I tried to reach what was to them unattainable. So they often made me settle for less, obviously with the best intentions, but it kind of discouraged me from chasing my dreams and my beliefs sometimes. And for me, I I mean, I didn't believe myself either. I was kind of stuck in the middle because I was too autistic to blend in with the normal kids, but too normal to blend in with the autistic kids. And that's when I realized that I have autism that's not autism, or simply put, invisible autism. And in general, people never believed I could accomplish anything in my life. And I even remember one guy in college saying, "Oh, she didn't pass her exams. Oh, she won't be stealing my job later. Guess who's laughing now?" Um, and now I would like to show you how I used these weaknesses how I turned these weaknesses into strengths. For a long time, I felt really insecure, like I already told you, but one time when I burned out during my last full-time job, I felt like I had no other choice but doing things for me. So I was burned out and I was like, okay, now I'm gonna do things for me, for myself, and I'm going to take a giant leap of faith. That's when I became a freelancer. And I did this in my own typical manner. So one day in May 2015, which is about 2.5 years ago, I went to a co-working space here in Antwerp with my heavy laptop, a black thing, really heavy, an old-fashioned thing. And I went to a bunch of startups over there, and I was like, "Hey, I'm Magali, I'm going to improve your life by writing the best copy you've ever seen." And they were like, "Yeah, whatever. We're gonna give her a chance." They obviously liked my approach by being my blunt self. They were like, "Okay, it's not another cold call by one of the freelancers out there." So they gave me a chance, which I'm really grateful for. That was a great start, and that's how I got the ball rolling. But I knew that I wasn't there yet, because I felt that I was carrying a lot of baggage from my past experience, and I kept tripping over it by constantly trying to hide that autism myself. And as I gained more experience in the field, I realized one thing. Autism is both a curse and a blessing at the same time. Because I built my personal branding about my own personality, about my own enthusiastic, strange, a little bit awkward personality, which means that people know, whoever works with me know that what they see is what they get. What they see is what they get. And recently I asked a bunch of customers why they liked working with me, and they all answered, "We love your enthusiastic personality, we love your honesty, and as an absolute fan of integrity, I'm really happy about that." Secondly, I have a keen eye for detail. Most people with Asperger's tend to lose sight of the bigger picture, and I'm often guilty of this during projects. But at the same time, whenever somebody sends me a 10 pages long document and there's one spelling mistake in it, I will have seen it. And the third thing is I'm a perfectionist. So once I go for it, I go for it. And if I want something bad enough, I will succeed. I mean, I know this isn't always necessarily a good thing, but my ambition is what has gotten me so far today, whatever. What I've learned in the past and today, what still drives me is that to work with what you have to offer, you gotta find that thing that makes you get out of bed every morning, your true passion. It may sound like a huge cliche. As a matter of fact, it is a cliche, but passion is my mantra, and I often say if I can do it, everybody else can. That doesn't mean you have to settle for less, because I believe that everyone has to keep pushing, keep evolving. For me, the one thing that I do every day is learning. I just keep learning. As soon as the learning stops, there's no challenge, and if there's no challenge, it means that you're taking things for granted. And the most important part for me is that every bad trait can mean something good too. Like for me, again, the blunt personality, it's what makes my collaborations with other clients and with people work so well. And I'm really happy about that. And then today, I still try to do things that make me different. Not just not just professionally, but also by doing things in my own way. It's not just about finding a niche, it's about designing your very own USP. Let me give you an example. Today, I write copy for tech startups and larger companies and media outlets, but I do this by involving emotions, like not just writing the facts, but I involve emotions, people emotions, like I am doing right now with my own. If there's one conclusion I've made over the past few years, it's that disabilities come in all varieties. I mean, they don't even have to have a name, but the truth is, it's not a matter of accepting those disabilities, but it's a matter of turning them into your assets and advantages. And that's when, and if you can do that, you're going to get really far. I think I'm the living proof of that.